Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tough Garage. We're continuing the work on main project, the Ford Cortina. We're going to start aligning all the panels on the left hand side of the car now. So the right hand side's been completely done. That was a mission. The left hand side should be much faster, much easier. There's less panels to do. There's only the doors and the guard. The bonnet and the boot have already been done. So let's get into it. Okay, so the rear door's already been aligned just by moving the hinges here. So let's see if we can see that there. So just by adjusting and loosening these up, tilting the door, whichever way you need to tilt it, and that's how I've got the alignment there. So the alignment points, as I mentioned in the previous video, are here and here. So they're the 2 points that you've got to get everything sort of flowing perfectly. As you can see, it's spot on there. So whatever you end up with, so you end up with that gap there, that's what you've got. If you end up with that gap there, that's what you've got. I mean, look at the difference. Okay, so I can go forward, but if I go forward, that's going to close up. Alright, that's the window frame. So the window frame is aligned to the pillar. See, so it's got the same curve. The gaps, how far it sits in from the drip rail end is spot on to the other side. So that's what I was saying before about there's only certain things you can adjust and then you've got to live with it. So this would be a factory sort of live with it situation. I can't live with it. So hence why I had to do all the gapping on the other side and all the mods that I've done. Okay, so that one's set. We can now start doing the front door. Because as you can see, it's got a bit of a little mishap there. When the doors were on before, when they weren't actually bolted in, they were just sort of sitting there and taped up with masking tape. Of course they eventually fell off and bent the corner of the door. So I'll just fix that up first so we can get all the alignments and the alignment points all set up correctly, and then I'll put it back on. So I've taken the bottom hinge off. If you can see these studs, I had them zinc plated, so that's why they look all shiny and new. But I didn't realise at the time that I've put the wrong ones in. I don't know if you can see that, but the one on the right hand side is slightly shorter than the one on the left, and they're actually both the incorrect ones. So I've got a heap of spares here, and I'll show you the differences between all of them. Okay, so these are all original studs, and you can see all the differences in height. So the first two are the same height, the third one's a little bit longer, then these two are the same height. Okay, now the two rusted out ones go in the top hinges, but they're also different. They've got like a fat head one and a smaller head one. Then you've got two fat head ones but in different heights, which are these two. And then this one's got a smaller head. Even the little area where they, sort of clamp into the hinge, some are deeper than others. So you really got to pay attention if you take these out and then put them back in. Okay, at first fit, this is where we're at. So you can see here we're way too close and maybe a tiny bit low there, but have a look at that. See, the frame, window frame is way too high, so the door's too high obviously. I mean, look at that point there, and at the bottom as well. So let's try and adjust. Okay, so after another quick adjustment, we're getting close. So that point there is good, spot on. But the curve of the actual door, as it gets to the top here, sitting out too far. So the whole side of this area of the door needs to go in further. The bottom can't go any further out, otherwise that shape there starts to get all wonky. So yeah, did a little adjustment from the actual hinge here as well. Brought the door out, it's looking good. So now this point here as well, as you can see, the straightness of the door matching the end of the sill panel. So you can't go any further forward or any further back with the actual door, because otherwise that stuffs that up. A lot of mucking around. Alright, so at this point I'm going to add the rubber to the door jamb and the catch and striker to the door, so that when I start making adjustments they're sort of solid. Okay, lock and striker are on. So we've adjusted how far in the door closes, which is spot on there to that point. But as you can see, it's sitting slightly high, so we're going to drop it down a tiny bit. Okay, so after a final striker adjustment, you can see it's spot on now, and the height's spot on as well. So we've got this bodyline point set on the door, so I'm happy with that. The issue now, see, this curve starts to slowly, see there, it's okay, there it's starting to sit out. Here it's a little out as well, I'm not too worried about that as much. At the bottom it's out, but I can tell it's out a little bit here because that's where the door fell as well. So hitting that in will fix it up a little bit, but I've got to make sure that the bottom of the door is perfectly straight. This area here is not straight, they're not straight on the doors, so the back door actually curves out like that, and the front door, as it comes here, it bows out and then comes back in again. Very slightly, but it does it. So I've got to get these 2 points first, and then check if this line here flows as well as it does on the other side. Wow, okay, let's get to it. Okay, so the next thing that needs to be done, the sill panels are dead straight. So if you put a ruler on them, they're perfectly straight. The doors, the bottom of the doors, are just slightly off. So we've got to get them perfectly straight first before any other adjustment is sort of done. Okay, so the bottom of the door is nice and straight now, same as the sill panel, same as that one. I've done a little bit of finessing here, and I've got these two edges to meet up, so I'm happy with that. They all meet. Tiny bit wonky at the bottom there, but that's only because it's got an area here that I need to panel beat, so that's got a dent there, and that's the frame behind that's starting to push a little. So that'll all be done later. I'm not going to do any sort of panel beating and straightening just yet. I'm just trying to get alignments and gaps. So mainly alignments at the moment. So that's not too bad. As you can see, there's no gap there, so I'm happy with that. Okay, so I didn't have any access to the bolts, no matter what I tried. So I did this on the other side as well. I just trenched out the hinge a little bit. I don't believe it's going to weaken it all that much. So I can get access to the bolts and then adjust the door inwards and outwards, so that this way and that way as far as I need to, while it's actually mounted. It's just so much easier to do. So what I've created now is this flow here. Okay, so by moving the door in, it only needed to go 2 mil. So by moving the door in 2 mil, now this curve meets the sill panel and flows perfectly. It's the little things, guys. Okay, so what I did earlier that you saw, I just did a little bit of welding here. So what I've done, I've just welded the skin to the actual door frame. I find that once they're both together and a lot more solid than just wrapping them around like that, they tend to move a lot better when you're trying to manipulate them. I'll dress them up later. You know, obviously you're not going to leave it like that. It looks terrible, but I'll dress those welds up, make it all nice and neat, and the seam sealer that goes over that will just hide it all. That took a crap ton of work, but I got there. So nice and flush, both ways, all the way down. So everything meets now, even the pillar. Gave that a couple of really big whacks right in the corner there, and that sort of follows the pillar now nicely. Really happy with that, and that's just alignment. So we haven't done the actual window frames yet. I haven't done the gapping for them. Haven't done alignments for them. Just the doors, all aligned and ready for gapping. Going to start the gapping now. And this is a little gapping tool I think I showed you guys before from Downtown Customs. So it's got, you know, 3mm, 4mm, 5mm and 6. I'm going for a 5mm. So 4 can't even get in there, not even the 3. That's how tight that gap is there. 4mm can't get into there, 3mm just at that point and it gets tight. So you can see 4mm there, it's all over the place. If I'm going for 5, look, 5 gets nowhere. Here we got 5, a little bit tight, then it goes nicely all the way along, then it gets tight again. There, so some material will have to get taken out. Not too bad at the bottom there. So this area here is close to 5mm. Still not spot on though. Okay, let's get to it. So we're at 5mm now. You can see the difference, it's massive. So all the way around, actually right at the bottom there, it's actually closer to 5.5. So that's got to be filled in, but I'll show you what this causes. So can you see that? The skin splits. So as the skin wraps around the frame, when you shave that much off, it splits the skin. So when the skin splits like that, you've got to then weld it. Luckily here, there's not enough material taken off, it's only a tiny bit, so it's pretty good, it doesn't split there. But here, it's all got to be welded back again and then grinded again perfectly. Oh yeah, it's not easy. After lots and lots and lots of tiny little spots, this is what you end up with. It's crude, but it gets the job done. It needs lots of dress up, lots of cleaning up. So now we go back to grinding. Then you'll have to do the inside nice and neatly, the outside nice and neatly, sand it, and you end up with a nice edge. But yeah, this process takes quite a lot of time. I just want to see if I can capture this terrible join. I would say it's from factory, where the sill panel joins this a dog leg sort of area. They're brazed on, so they're not welded on, they're just brazed on the corner there and brazed up here. But I'll just show you, let's see if we can capture it. I'm not sure if I'll have to double check the camera, but I can see the gap here and how this line doesn't flow. So as it gets to here, it's nice and curved, and then it gets to here and it's dead flat there, and it starts to curve again, and that's not right to any of this shape at all. So on the other side, I fixed that up by adding weld to that corner there and then shaping it again, just so that this curve continues to flow all the way down to the bottom. First pass of the welder and grinding back all the gaps now to 5mm. You can see what ends up happening there. See that? That has to be filled in with some more weld, or that sort of pitting that doesn't quite get filled up. So I'll fill that up. I've done a little bit of the dog leg there as well. You can see where the brazing is. It was just all over the place. The joint wasn't anywhere near neat enough. So I've done a first pass of that. That needs a little bit more as well. So a bit more welding, a bit more grinding, but we're almost there. Another area of concern is this area here. So where the door meets the C-pillar and quarter panel area there. This point here is perfect at the moment. It cannot be moved or adjusted, but this area here of the quarter is low. So where this door starts to meet, this edge is quite low. Let me see if I can, I don't know if you guys can see the sunlight that's coming through that gap there. So you can see at the door it's touching, and on the quarter it's not. And then as it gets further up the quarter, see there, it starts to touch again. So I did a similar fix on the other side. So what I did, I just built up the edge like that. It's only a small amount, maybe a mil and a half, if that. And then the two edges meet nicely. So the dog leg area has been fixed up. You can see how much extra it needs just to create that curve correctly. So that's all fixed up now, and that flushes smoothly with the door and that dog leg now. Okay, the next issue that we have is the gap at the bottom of the door. So that's 5mm what we're after. That's huge. 6mm, still huge. So it needs about 3mm more added to the bottom. I'm not going to do that in just little spot welds. It's not. That only does like a mil at a time. That's all it can sort of do. Otherwise, you're sitting there for days just doing little spots all the way along. So what I've done, I've got a piece of flat bar that I bought from the metal place down the road. That is 3mm thick, which is exactly the thickness of that fold in the door. And I've cut it at 5mm. It's a little bit longer than it needs to be, but I'll weld that onto the bottom
and then shave what I need to and go from there. Much easier. So after lots of welding and grinding, we are done. So the back door gaps are all done, all the bottoms done at 5mm, the whole lot all the way around. And miraculously, the front is done as well. So I've got that done and out of the way. All the gaps on the bottom as well. Now we're up to guard to front of the door. Now these areas that I've marked with a cross, you can see there's massive issues, massive gap there. You can see here it doesn't quite flow with the curve of the door or the guard, so that needs to be addressed on the actual door. And here as well, just sort of dips in towards the door. It's just terrible. These are all areas that need to be addressed. Alrighty, front guard is aligned just by loosening the bolts, moving the guard in and out. Everything lines up. So these 2 points are the points that need to line up. So this point here and this point here. So it all flows nicely like that, as you can see. So they all match up, and so does that one. So all the heights are correct. How far in it has to be is flush with that. All I had to do, I make these little aluminium little spacers. So 1mm, 2mm, I've got 3mm and 5. So I just put one in the middle bolt. So let me just turn the torch on. So that bolt there, I just put a spacer in it, and that got this center section to line up nicely, otherwise they were sitting too far in. But yeah, happy with that. So now the gapping, gapping's terrible. So the gapping is correct at the front of the guard here, matching the front of the bonnet. So when the bonnet shuts, this flows perfectly with the front of the bonnet. So that's how you have to line that up. So how far back it goes. So that needs gapping now. It's a bit too tight. Let me just double check. So that's 5. That's what I'm after. Doesn't fit. 4 fits just. Not up the top there. Not even 3mm. 3mm there. Not even 4 fits there. What do we got here? 4mm. Not quite 5. Not quite 5. And yeah, closing in. It's all over the place. So I'll have to chop that and re-weld. You know how it goes. Okay, before I do the gapping, what I'm going to do is finish off this drip rail. So these are a custom drip rail that I've made. So I've shaved the original drip rails off. I got some 5mm rod, round bar, welded that on, and just carefully burred out the weld so it all sort of flows like that and comes back around. It's a nice, neat sort of way to go about it without keeping it just flat and plain looking. But I never ended up finishing up the ends. So what I'm going to do, they end at about here on the other side. So I'm just going to continue, build it up, and it's just sort of, just what it does is it just sort of fades away into this plenum area like that. so it looks a lot neater and more sort of finished off, I guess. And just like that, we're done. Well, actually 3 hours later, no joke. So as you can see, it just sort of flows into the plenum there, nice and smooth. I'll do all the finishing off once I start doing body work, but it's close enough. The curve's right. That's all done. The inside's been done as well. So you can see it all gets filled in and then shaped. So now that that shape's all correct, I've got to get a 5mm gap. So it's only 5mm at the very tip here. So all there has to be grinded back and then re-welded because it'll split. So that a nice 5mm gap ends up there. Okay, all done. All gapped and ready to go. Just got to do the back side of it, but I'll do all the back sides once all the panels are back off. Now, the other dilemma that I have, this is the next part. So we're moving on to gap of guard to door. We're aligned with the guard at the front. So as I showed before, it aligns with the bonnet, so the end of the bonnet. The gap opens up here, so I fixed up the door. It's still not quite right, so I'll have to fill a little into the guard, not fill so much, remove and then fill, I guess. But what I've done on the other side, I've aligned the door with the end of the sill panel. But what I seems to have done here, I just had to double check the other side, is I've aligned it to where the curve sort of ends of the sill panel. I don't know if the camera quite catches that. On the other side, I've aligned the door with the start of the curve, so more on the end of the flat part of the sill panel. So that's what I'm going to do again, and that allows me to not have to do so much work on the actual guard, because that needs a lot of work if you're filling in a gap of the guard, because you've got to work from here all the way down to the very bottom. I'll just remove some material which I've already sort of welded anyway of the door and slowly blend it into here. It needs to have some material removed from this point here anyway. But first I want to get the guard curving correctly. So you can see from this point here to about there, the guard sort of dips in and curves around like that. It's not quite right. So I want that line to continue to move along smoothly, you know, not sort of wiggle back and forth and do all this sort of stuff. So the same thing here, it's got to, from about there to there, it's not quite right. It sort of curves right out and then comes back in, and there's no reason for it. Just bad quality, you know, from back in the day. Okay, let's get started. Okay, the next thing that we need to work on is these window frames. So, as I found on the other side, they're not quite 100% to the window shape, which doesn't help gaps at all. See if I can show you. I'm not sure if it'll capture it or not. This corner here, always on the other side, it's the same thing. It sits way too high into the corner. So you can see the window starts coming down a little more, so it needs to move down a little and curve out this way a little more. And if it did that, it would actually, the gap there, especially into this corner, would be much better. So what I did on the other one, I just sliced it, and just by giving it that 1 mil slice with the cutting disc, sorry, it brings that end in closer, and it brings that top down a little bit closer. So you just weld that back in together, and just by removing that 1 mil, it fixes the gap perfectly. There we go, all done. So just a mil or two, actually not even two, no. Just a mil out, you know, here and there, but it makes the difference for the gaps and the way that everything sits in the jambs. So that's all done, that needed slicing there. I can't dress them up at the moment because the compressor's died. I can't believe it, the brand new one. So that's gone off for repairs. Anyway, so that's all done. That gap there, this one needed to be moved forward, so that way, so that gap's done now, and all around there was good. So the only other thing now is, see the height of this compared to this as it goes along. So see how it sits lower. The front door on the other side, this side needed a little bit of filling, so it sat too low here. So what I'll do the same thing here. I'll show you how I do that, because it's quite thick in this area here. And I'll just add some metal, weld it in, and then slowly grind it, and it'll flow, and you won't notice the actual thickness difference because it's only about a mil and a half. But it makes it all look nice and neat and flow, which is what we're after. It's what the designers would have wanted. The compressor's back from repair, so I'm back at it. So gaps are all done here, door to guard, all completed. Door to A-pillar, plenum, whatever, that's all done. Now I'm doing the guard to plenum. It's a little tricky there because there's a lip that's all in there, and as you can see it's grinded away now. So what I've done on the other side, the same thing happened. I've got to add a bit of weld all along here just to give it a bit of strength again in that area, and not make it look so unfinished, I guess. But there's that massive gap that I just showed here, so I've got to take the guard off, straighten that up first before I can start the bonnet to guard alignment, because otherwise it'll be out. The bonnet to plenum is all done, so alignment for that's spot on. And the gaps all done, bonnet to plenum as well. All welded up and gapped. A little rough, but I'll clean all that up once I take the guard back off and do all the undersides and stuff like that. And it has to, you know, these areas have to go back into epoxy, but you can see the gap flows perfectly all along there. So now we just got alignment guard to bonnet. So I'm just going to loosen up this bolt here, pull the guard out a little bit, it's just a little bit in, and go from there, slicing the bonnet to suit the gap. Okay, I've adjusted it as best I can. Now for you Cortina guys that say, yeah, Cortina gaps aren't that bad. I'm just going to show you something. So we've got 5mm there. As you go along, no more 5mm, right? So it doesn't fit in there at all. I've set it to 5mm there, and then look at this. Look at that. I'm just going to show you. That's 6mm in there. Look at 6mm here. What am I supposed to do here? The bonnet line there seems to be straight. Look at the guard. And you can't, it's not like you can manipulate the guard and bend the guard to, you know, tie into here. It just affects everything. Jesus. Moving along, the bonnet and guard are aligned. So they both meet, so those edges meet as best they can. There's a little bit of a curve to the end of the bonnet, so as it comes down here it just sort of drops from about here to here. So I'll raise that back up again or flatten it out again a little bit later. When I do some of the body work, I'll start doing that sort of stuff, and then all I've got to do is just drop the adjuster here in the engine bay, and that'll drop the bonnet down 1mm or whatever. It's only about 1mm. But just so that these meet and you don't have so much body filler build up along here afterwards. I'll just show you something funny. Well, I think it's a little bit funny. So I'm trying to align the apron and the guard. Now, if you have a look here, see how much further up the actual bracket or whatever you would call that for the apron is compared to the guard. Yet the apron and the guard, as you can see, are aligned. Now it's not just that one, the one further up is exactly the same. Look how far off the center of the hole is. So I can't even get the bolt in there at all at the moment, and everything's lined up. That's shocking. Another thing, so at the front here, there's the bolt that goes on the guard onto what would be, I guess, part of the radio support. There's a little cavity where, you know, the guard sort of fits in here. See there? There's made like a cavity in there. The shapes of both are completely off. So this doesn't actually sit in the cavity at all. Then you've got another cavity here where the guard sits in there. So just in there, there's a little cavity. And see how it's poking the guard up and out? It's all over the place.